UFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What time you said coming over you. You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Good morning, welcome along to a UFC Matters. It is Ask George, 11 o'clock on Friday morning, and we are live, which means we rely on your questions because it is called Ask George. Morning, George.
Good morning, Steve. Morning, everybody.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
joining in. Yeah, and you too.
Good to see you. George, I'm going to ask you a question. How are you spending your summer and how are you whiling away the hours of boredom without Newcastle United? I mean, I know we've always got something to talk about on here, but do you miss the weekend and the match, or do you relatively enjoy your summer and just, pick up a book and read it or watch a few things on TV?
I've got to tell the truth. I miss the routine of match day. I meet all the guys in Irish Centre and I have a Coke as well established. And Darren buys us a half a Coke and we'll have a good chew over the fat about Newcastle United, and then we'll saunter up to the ground and watch the game. So it's a routine that's very important to us. I mean, I keep using the phrase, I like my match day to be an occasion, and because of things like war flags and all the rest of it, it's becoming an occasion. So yes, I miss it. However, I fill it in with other sport and things. I find other things to watch on the telly and get involved in and online as well. What I try and avoid is all the clickbait idiots and the people who can't, the people who for the life of me, I still see people out there, our fans, never mind other people, who can't see what's happening to her. Can't see that we've just had the most incredible season. And I still question whether Piff's staying with and all that tripe, and of course, as soon as the second strip comes out and it's green, guess who else appears? The people who don't want to have anything to do with Saudi Arabia. I try and avoid that because that just drives us insane. I mean, this human rights stuff drives us insane anyway. When you look at the state of our country at the moment, how dare we comment on other people's human rights? So
Yes, strange scenario developing, and we'll be getting into that, I guess, over the weekend on Sunday. The Amigos and the Professionals is a bit of a mashup again on Sunday night, 5 o'clock.
yeah,
So I'm sure that will come into the conversation with Neil, Stu, and Mitch, and yourself, of course. Get your questions in, a couple in already, but I'll give you a bit more time. So you mentioned other sports, George. What other sports do you enjoy?
well, I enjoy as an armchair supporter. I enjoy darts. I enjoy some of the snooker, the top class snooker, and of course, the other day I enjoyed the real Test cricket. Some of these, slam ups, T20s, and all the rest of it in the 100, all that sort of thing. That for me, that's not cricket. That's just lads in the back lane having a swipe at the ball. But on that 5-day test with India was real cricket for me. It was absolutely enthralling, and people playing proper cricket, which I quite enjoy. And even more so now that my grandson Joss is actually playing. He's playing at quite a good level as well. So that's the kind of thing I enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh, and Formula One as well.
Obviously, the Club World Cup's been on. Have you been watching any of it, George? Have you managed to see any of it?
Little bits of it, yeah. And
What do you make of it?
think, well, as a spectacle, because of some of the games are played with nearly zero spectators, it's difficult to get into a game when there's no doubt about it. The atmosphere of people cheering and all the rest of it does add to it. And when it's not there, you miss it. The one thing that has surprised us, and I've watched 1 or 2 games, is the standard of the South Americans. I mean, some of the South Americans have been putting in some real performances. I mean, the South American team that turned Chelsea over, it wasn't hard for them. and by any stretch of the imagination, Chelsea are no mugs. That Chelsea are not a bad side if you're honest about football. And yet the South Americans, I forget which one it was, just turned them over. I think it was 5-1. I mean, you can imagine. So yeah, there's been some of it's good. Some of it, there's a New Zealand team there, which is the equivalent of a part-time team here in the UK, and they had to play. Who were they playing? They're playing one of the top teams from Portugal, and of course they got well and truly hammered. But that's why they call it the World Club Cup, so world clubs can be there. I mean, I hear questioning, even on Sky Sports, people question how arrived there, who arrived there, who got involved. What was their passage to get into that World Club contest. But the bottom line is that FIFA and UEFA see a money-making exercise, and they're the ones that pay the piper. They'll go for it. That wants to see there's some money in it.
Okay, get your questions in, folks. Got a couple of questions here. So Lee G, good morning, says, question to you both. Was the Ashley era worse to live through, or was the McKeague-Seymour era worse? I was born in 1987, so I was lucky to miss 2 dark eras. My dad tells me regularly that the 80s was worse. My dad also tells me about a time when we played at home in the 80s and our fans changed. We thought we were right. We were right. Just wondering if you were there or remember that. Well, I'll start because I remember that 100%. Lee. I remember those kind of songs. It was a dark terrace humor really in the 80s that I remember. And you get the people now who invent the songs and match days, and nothing's changed in that score. It's the one thing that's still fairly relevant in football, that people make songs up about players and make songs up about owners and stuff like that. And there's always a terrace wit that is second to none. I guess the only thing that's changed from those 70s and 80s is that certain things are deemed inappropriate, and if you sang something that you maybe sang in the 70s and 80s, the likelihood is you'd be arrested and banned from the ground. So things have changed. I guess things have changed massively for the better.
in that score. I mean, the amount of racism which was directed towards black players back in the 70s and 80s was nothing short of disgusting. And, you know, it was a different time. It was a different era. So those are the things I remember quite clearly, like walking into the Gallagher end, which, of course, you know, was a terraced end, didn't have a roof, you know, had vegetation, trees growing in it. They had the open air toilets, of course, no women's toilets that I can recall. And yeah, just people selling the National Front at the turnstiles when you went through, you know, it was that kind of era. And then, you know, crowd control. What was crowd control in those days? Well, you had to control yourself. You know, if you started as a youngster at the back, you could end up at the front, up against the fences, which were there to keep us in. And yeah, I mean, frightening times, but you put yourself through it because you enjoyed being part of something. That was what it was all about, Lee. So the atmosphere, though, was toxic, and it was violent and vitriolic at the time, especially during those days when, you know, McKeag and you know, Seymour to a lesser extent, but McKeag mainly, were accused of keeping the family silver. And of course, the sale of Waddle, you know, to Spurs, and then the sale of Beardsley to Liverpool, and then Gascoigne to Spurs was the final straw for a lot of supporters. People were invading the pitch and stamping their shirt into the ground. You know, there was protests outside the club. And at the same time, Sir John Hall and the Magpie Group were trying to, you know, wrestle the club from the grasps of McKeag. And it took some time, but they got there eventually. I remember those days, and I must be looking through black and white tinted glasses, Lee, but I remember those days more fondly than I do going to the game these days. And I only mean that in the sense that I was younger. Football was still relatively new. It was the excitement of going to the match and having a few pints with your mates. And, you know, it was that kind of, you know, when you get to 18, is that kind of, well, I'm a man now, and it's freedom, and you go and enjoying stuff with your mates away from your parents. And it's a different era, you know. Now, super stadiums, you know, you obviously pay through the nose to go to football, home and away. It's just different. It is different. And you know what? During boring parts of the game in the 80s, there was a terrace wit. You were all standing. You were all clubbed together. And people were watching the match. They weren't watching the mobile phones. There's so many differences which made it better in so many ways. You know, and then when the fences did come down, you know, that was after obviously the Heysel Stadium disaster, and of course after Hillsborough. You know, that was when the modernisation of football stadiums came in with the Taylor report, and things just changed and it became what they are now. But you know, I enjoyed those days. I campaigned. There's that infamous photo of me, which got us a hiding from me dad, of me on the back page of the Daily Mirror with Paul Baines, who was, you know, holding my scarf up. It was on fire outside the ground, and we were campaigning against the club at the time. You know, we wanted them to sell to John Hall and McKeag, who'd just been relegated to what is the Championship now, but that was the old second division. And yeah, it was, you know, but we protested. We had a voice, and there was that kind of it's that belonging as a youngster. It's what you want to be part of something. You want to be involved in something, and football gave you that in spadefuls back in those days. So you know, I personally, Lee, I would say that the Ashley era was the worst. I hated it. You know, he almost drove many people to actually hate their own football club, which is very difficult to do. The difference between the McKeag and Seymour thing was we disliked the owners. The people weren't happy with the owners. They wanted the board out. And that was it. You know, they wanted the board to leave the club and sell it to somebody who they felt could do better, which ultimately did happen. But I've waffled on a little bit there, George. What was your views on that?
And I'm nodding in agreement. It was very similar for me. Bearing in mind, of course, my supporting days started back in the 1940s. So, and I'm more sympathetic towards Seymour than I am to people like McKay, because he was never and I hate to say this if there's some of Seymour's family watching or listens, he never was a likeable man. Had he been, he would have been a hero. He won everything as a player for Newcastle United, and then he invested his money in the club to become a director, and eventually became chairman, but also had 3 spells as manager. And you look at the spells of him as manager. That's when we went to Wembley. He had the technique of getting into that final. He worked it out. Newcastle used to go on training camps when no clubs didn't do that in those days. So it splits for me. The McKeag era was painful because they were just sitting there taken. There was never any sign of any advancement. If they'd been able to say they were going to advance the club, but like you say, all we're doing was we're producing great players and moving them on and moving them on and moving them on, and becoming in danger of becoming a yo-yo club. It was that kind of worry for me. The other thing is, of course, is that supporters need to be careful about wishing for something and not getting quite what they want. Because if ever there was a manager appointment which was made by the supporters, it was Jackie Charlton, because he was local and everybody wanted a Geordie. My God, what a mistake that was, as we all learned. But never mind, and he's got 2 players like Beardsley and Waddle, and he's telling them to lift the ball in the air, not playing it on the ground like they could. All of that was dreadful. But yeah, the McKeag thing was just, for me, was just about the fact that they were sitting there taken. They were happy to sit there in case we got to Wembley so they could sit next to the Queen in the Royal Box. That's all that mattered to them. They weren't really in the sense of being supporters like we were. And of course, yeah, absolutely right. The worst of the worst was the Ashley eras. Because it was just dreadful. And he did, there used to be 10 of us go to the match together, including Neil. And by the 3rd year, 4th year of Ashley's reign, it was down to just me and Neil. All the others left. And they left and said, we'll come back when he's gone. And some of them left for silly things like, we used to make a day of our Saturday. We'd go into the bar in 92 where we had our seats. We'd watch the early match on the telly and have our lunch and drink, and the lads would have their drinks. And then they'd have a drink at half time. Then they'd come off and watch the second match in bar 92 on the television, because they kept the televisions on. And the lads would have that buy their tea. They would buy another meal. So tenner was spending like that. It was a big day for all of it, and for the club, the amount of money was spent. But a couple of times we went in, the lads couldn't get what they wanted. And the last straw for a couple of them, I remember, was they went for their lunch, they wanted their fish and chips and their mushy peas. And they told they couldn't have the mushy peas. Why not? Ashley won't buy the plastic container to put them in. So they come back and finished their fish and chips, and at the end of the game said, right, no more, goodbye. And they never came back, and still don't come back, but they would love to, but they can't get a ticket. So yeah, that was the worst period. You're absolutely right. People did get so sick. It was to the point of just not liking Newcastle United, and it was about the whole atmosphere of the thing. It was him going making these big statements and promises every now and again and never actually acting on them. And then there was him and the way Lambias behaved, and then there was the Dennis Wise stuff with Kevin and all that sort of thing. None of that made you like Newcastle United. In fact, Newcastle United were a laughing stock, in my opinion. Which is sad, because it's also my opinion that had Ashley had the common sense to invest when he had Rafa in the team on the up, he could have been a hero himself, but he even turned on Rafa because all he wanted was the advertising his clothes in the ground. That's all that mattered to him, nothing else. So yeah, awful. But hey, we're past that.
Les says, did Marjorie ever go to the matches, George?
No, Les. I'm a football fanatic, and when I actually played, the two women in my life was my girlfriend and my mother, and they both came to watch me once. And after one game, they told me straight, "We're not coming back anymore." So I said, "Well, why?" So Marjorie said to me, "Because him in that black and white shirt's not my George. That's a different George. That's not the George I live with. He's a different person." Well, the reason is I'm not a very good loser, I'm afraid. And when I'm on the pitch, I want to win. And it sometimes shows in a particular way. And neither my mother or my wife enjoyed it. So that was the end of the watching days. There was a couple of times we went on short tours with Newcastle United when I was in the ends. We went on a short tour of Scotland and played some games in Highland League clubs and that, and they allowed us to bring our girlfriends with us, and Marjorie came on that, but she spent most of the time with the other girls on the bus shopping in the town while we played the football. She never watched the football. So
there we go. Les just commenting on what we've been saying, says going to the games from the early 70s, can only say that as a female, not once did I feel I was in danger, which is nice. Roger says, George, where does the one-eyed naval architect come from?
Oh, I'm a naval architect by profession, and about it's nearly 4 years ago, I had an operation, and unfortunately, when I came out of the operation, I was blind. And they partially put it right, but I only could see out of one eye. So I was happy to become the one-eyed naval architect. Actually, I have to tell you, being a naval architect and having a son with the wit he's got, our Neil, if we're out at a party or a dinner and he happened to be there, and somebody would say to us, "What do you do, George?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm a naval architect." And I could hear my son saying in the background, "Remember, they're the people that designed the Titanic."
Good stuff. Roger says, thank you. Get some more questions in if you can, folks. Yeah, just want to talk about what Darren's talking about here. He's talking about Rafa Benitez. He says, I thought under Rafa that Mike Ashley might do the right thing and back the team to improve. He had his chance to turn things around, but he didn't. I mean, why do you think Mike Ashley, didn't do that? Was it because of the fact that Rafa was playing like the fans against the owner? He knew what he was doing. He'd been in kind of political disputes before when he was at Liverpool.
Yeah, and I think that was the bottom line, was that Ashley couldn't stand anybody else being more popular than him. It was as simple as that. And he wanted to be the boss and show he was the boss. He couldn't stand having anybody else getting that sort of adulation. And certainly, I don't think anybody that was around at the time will forget that New Year's interview when Rafa was wanting to buy one or two players and Ashley steadfastly refused to put his hand in his pocket. And that press conference, you could feel the heat of Rafa without them actually bursting. And it was awful. But it was Ashley showing who was the boss,
Yeah, certainly was. Do you think Rafa could have succeeded at Newcastle? And I mean, were you surprised that he didn't maybe come back when PIF took over, especially with a man Ramirdad being so close to him?
Well, yes, except that being the man he is, he'd made a commitment elsewhere, and he felt he had to honor that commitment. So the timing just didn't match. And while I'm a huge Rafa fan, there's a bit of me now says maybe that wasn't a bad thing, that we needed we needed something fresh, completely fresh, new owners, new manager, the whole thing completely starting anew. And I think up to now history shows that probably was the right thing. But I think Rafa would have done something with the team. I mean, his adulation from the fans was not far off. It was with Special K. It was really, people did, and the fact that he bought for a foreigner to buy into the Geordie dream as quickly as he did and realizing what it meant. He was Newcastle 24/7, and that's what people up here love. But I think at the end of the day, I think the right thing happened. We started completely afresh new owners, new manager, and that probably was the right thing to do.
Darren says, do you think Mike Ashley was the worst owner in Premier League history?
Oh no. He was bad, but there were some things he gave which we're rejoicing in now. The fact we have a club with no debt. look at what Abramovich left Chelsea. And look at what Arsenal had to get out of with Dean and people like that. No, Ashley was bad, but there were worse owners. But as I say, he's way he managed the club financially in the end turned out to be good for us, because PIF took over a club without raging debt. All the clubs above us, the big six so-called, every one of them is $1 billion plus in debt. We're not in debt at all, and part of that's because of the way Ashley handled the finances. So, but he was bad, but I don't think he was the worst. I think if you look at what Abramovich has left, and they're still chasing £2 billion of him and others around the country. The people that managed Manchester City before they were taken over by the Abu Dhabi, quite different. So, but yeah, if you see the problem for Mike Ashley was he started with such promise, and he regaled the fans by going down the big market and having a pint with the lads and filling the bar with his credit card and all that sort of thing, which is wonderful, and got on a table and sang Blade and races, etc. Well, that was fine, but then when the wheels come off, the one thing Geordies won't forget is somebody who's turned their back on them, and that's exactly what Ashley did. All the things he did subsequently, the Keegan things and all of that. No, but he wasn't the worst.
Okay, we're coming up to a break. I just want to point out that the fanzine will be available next season. 4 issues for £25. We've knocked £2.50 off. That is including your postage as well. So if you want an NUFC Matters fanzine next season, 4 issues for £25, and all proceeds are going to Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. We will be posting out issue 4 from this season next week, so they should be landing on your doorstep. Not this weekend, but the weekend after. And there's been a lot of people saying, can you put some stuff on your shop? Well, we've now got the memorabilia and merchandise up and running on the website. We have got some cup final specials at the moment. We've got a couple of shirts signed by the 2 goal scorers in the cup final, Alexander Isak, of course, and Big Dan Byrne. We've also got some Anthony Gordon shirts signed by Anthony Gordon, and these are Carabao Cup tops. Of course, he scored in both semi-finals, so nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk if you're interested in that. And we've also got a mix of pictures signed by some of the first team squad as well. Jacob Murphy, Isaac and Tino on that one. Sandro Tonali and Harvey Barnes on that one. But pop onto the site, get yourself onto the merchandise side of things, and you will be able to make some purchases today if you so wish. Okay, get your questions in. Gonna have a quick 2-minute break. Back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk, email info@mrvickys.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. John Askew, good morning. He says Tino is marvellous. He has just finished a tremendous Premier League season. Then he's off to the Under-21 tournament and pre-season training starts on the 7th of July. Does George think it's crazy? I guess this also really is like the Club World Cup, isn't it? Because you have so many people who, footballers who just literally will not get a break.
It is crazy, and there's no question that clubs are going to have to manage their players in terms of burnout. I mean, my understanding is that Tino is in that competition because Thomas Tuchel wanted him to get some tournament experience rather than playing the friendlies with the big team, with the first team, England first team, and he thinks highly of him. I'm not surprised because he's been the star of the tournament for me. He's been absolutely incredible. I mean, that's something I have watched, where our players have been involved. And Tino's been great, but especially if you remember, he's a lad who came to us after a most serious injury. So he needs to be managed. But my consolation is he's got a manager and a backup team who will know how to handle him. I mean, I was aghast the other day when Tino revealed in a news conference that he speaks to Eddie Howe every day, even when he's with England. Eddie Howe rings up and has a chat and, how you doing, what's happening, this, that, and the other. Now that's just wonderful. That's amazing. No wonder they like the man. So there's, but burnout's a real issue for lots of players. I mean, Will Asula as well has been setting the world on fire for Denmark. He's been quite revealing, and others. So But it's a good question. Burnout must be a serious issue for clubs with non-stop in the way it's been and competitive as well. It'd be one thing if they were just playing friendlies, but they're not. They're playing really competitive football. So,
Can George think of any other industry where companies are not allowed to maximise potential because regulations restrict investment? Is it legal? It seems totally bonkers to me, but what does George think, says John?
Oh, I don't think I could put the name on any business that's like that. In fact, that's the bit of me that wants to hurry PIF up. I would love it if PIF was to take the Premier League to the competition courts, because I think they'd win hands down. But I think part of it is that they've kind of decided that they'll do things the proper way and not rock the boat. Don't give the Premiership the opportunity of saying, there, look, we told you what they would do if they got in. I'm sure that's part of it. But the other bit of me, having worked with Saudi Arabians, is that eventually they will get fed up. And if they do, haven't helped the Premier League. But I can't even begin to think of another industry where that sort of leveler, holding back people from investing their own money. It's not as though they were investing anybody else's money. They want to invest their own money, and it's just crazy. So the legal side of my brain says that in a competition sense, if Newcastle challenged that, I think they'd win hands down. And I think the work that Keith did demonstrated that, actually, to get the takeover through. It was the competition side that frightened them more than anything. So, yeah, it's just a nonsense.
Yep, certainly is. Get your questions in. Still got about 20 minutes left. Do you think Rafa is to blame or thank for the change in Premiership, big change to 4-2-3-1, George? So talking tactics now.
Oh, to blame? Well, I wouldn't say blame. Rafa was just a very, very skillful tactician, and he would manage the team and the players to suit who were playing. And I think sometimes that was very clever. I mean, some of his buys, occasionally you thought, well, what the hell has he bought him for? He bought. I forgot. Oh, come on, get the brain working. He bought a big centre forward from Nottingham Forest, and everybody said, "What the hell's he bought him for?" And he just used them on odd games where he thought he needed a big bloke up front, and very skillfully manipulated the players around him. So I wouldn't say blame him for any particular change in the way it's played. Maybe other people's just copied, but he was just a skilled tactician, and he made his team work against who they were playing against.
Okay. John says, does Eddie surprise George? No signings in the last 18 months, but silverware and Champions League football delivered. How far does George think Eddie can take us, especially with a few good arrivals?
Well, when, I'd say, when the new signings come in and Eddie gets to pick his team, and I got sick of reminding people that in the 25 who are registered with there are at least 9 of them who used to play for Billy Bruce when he would pick them because he didn't always pick them. So if Eddie Howe had been managing a team in the south, in London particularly, and done with the players he's got what he did for Newcastle United, he'd have been pushing for manager of the season. But because it's Newcastle away, stuck out in the northeast, he gets an honourable mention, but that's all he gets. Even now when I hear that they talk sport, people talk about him, they're terribly disrespectful in some ways. They don't appreciate 1 minute what he's done. So with his team, with a team that's selected with largely players he's wanted and brought in himself or coached himself, I think he could take us a long way. He's demonstrated. Look at the first foray into the Champions League. That night when we, PSG were going to come and give us a 1,000. We frightened them to death. And we give a good showing against all of the big teams. He got outthought once or twice. Dortmund, the manager of Dortmund, outthought a little bit, but Eddie learns and comes back stronger. And who would have thought, for example, on my way to the Carabao Cup, we beat every team that was above in the league, and in the semi-final, beat Arsenal twice when the pundits in the south were saying we didn't have a chance, and all of that was done with really skillful tactical nous and application of the player he's got. So with players to bolster the first team, players who are ready for the first team, not standbys, I think Eddie Howe could take us a long way.
Okay. From our perspective, George, PSR has hampered us. Darren's just talking about it here in his comment. He says, if Villa are now going down the route of selling the women's team back to themselves, shouldn't we copy, as the Premier League will not close this loophole? What's your feelings on that, George?
Oh, when you start playing with loopholes, where does it stop? I mean, it's just ridiculous. If it's something that Piff think that we can get something out of, okay, but it's a transient thing. It's a one-off. We want something which is we want income that's going to be lasting, like more significant sponsorships and things like that you hear Neil and Stu talk about endlessly on the professionals. So That's the side of the business I want to see grow. I'm not these it brings a few bob in, but a few pounds in, but it's a one-off. It does make a slight difference to PSR, but it's not something I'd like to see us getting involved in if we can manage it. But it smells of desperation as well, and I think that's where Villa are. I mean, they're now in such a dangerous position with their wages to income percentage being up in the 90%, which is where Leeds were when they collapsed. So maybe they need to do it.
Yeah, it's it's a fascinating time as far as Newcastle United fans are concerned, because we do have money, and I think if we're ever given the chance to spend it, I'm almost like reluctant to do that, George. Because we've done so well without spending it, but there is a lot of talk at the minute about players. Now, we don't speculate on NUFC matters, we never have, but couple of players which really are starting to feature more and more in the headlines over the weekend. I'm sure it'll get ramped up. James Trafford, first of all, we were linked with him last year. We've been linked with him again, George. And from my perspective, I think another goalkeeper coming in is vital. But we need to offload a couple of others. But James Trafford is he's English. Obviously, he's been part of a successful under-21s team. He's had a lot of experience at Burnley. Would you like to see him come in?
Yes, I would. And it's interesting if you look at the pattern of goalkeepers from that direction. Pope was under-21s. Trafford's under-21s. We had our own guy that. Who moved on, but was great from the under-21s. There's somebody in that cycle, in the under-21 cycle, who knows how to pick goalkeepers, is what I'm trying to say. And even the current one looks great as well. So I'm not unhappy about it. I mean, the rumor was last year that he had signed a agreement, a pre end of season agreement with us to come to us. So. He's always been on the cards. If it is him, fine. But I think, as I said the other night, I'd say it again. The transfers I like are the ones I don't know about. When Eddie and the guys standing on the pitch holding a scarf up and saying, "Here's Isaac, here's Bruno," and I'm saying, "Bruno who? Isaac who?" They're the signings I like. But the ones that are touted, it's interesting, but and other things that are going on behind the scenes, all the stuff about Geety again, is we don't seem to be able to avoid that either. But such is life. But I would like to see Trafford here. It's a short answer.
Yeah, I guess, we'll wait and see. João Pedro's been heavily linked today as well. Talk of Newcastle putting bids in. But I keep saying to people keep asking me, any news or have you heard anything about players coming in? And we keep saying on here, nobody's heard anything. You just need to see, journalists having spats online, because one person puts one thing out and another person says, well, that's not true. And, people are just hazarding a guess.
There's 2 or 3 of them arguing this morning about have Newcastle put in £120 million bids for 3 players. Well, nobody knows. This is the honest answer. And nobody in Newcastle United is going to tell you, that's for sure. Which is which is the way it should be, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, John's got another question. Thanks, John. You keep us going on shows like this when we don't have many watching live. It's obviously an awkward time, but it's the only time I could fit it in today. Due to a relatively small squad size and a lack of recent European experience, is George concerned that expectations for next season might be too high?
No, not really, because Eddie and his team and the current squad have showed that they can adapt. I think the Carabao Cup win did more for us than just silverware. We saw our team come of age, in my opinion. They went out and did a job and were up for it. And there was no way on that day were Liverpool going to beat us? And I think we'll get more of that as the season goes on. And the European season's a little bit longer because of the way it's configured now. And you get to play one or two less prominent teams, which helps you to get your feet under the table, as it were. So no, I think the team and Eddie and his team have learned to adapt, and that'll hold in good stead in Europe next year and in the Premiership as well.
Okay, John also says, what would George's guess be for timing regarding an announcement on a possible new stadium, and are there concerns that red tape and shenanigans might be holding things up, in George's opinion?
Well, anything red tape, you would be hearing about it. It would if it's inside the city centre, it would leak out. It's leak out like it's sieve. So I don't think it's red tape necessarily here. I have a suspicion. And this is me talking. This is George Mitchell talking. You see, we've had this huge debate on and off. How many? 60, 65, 75, 80,000. The one debate we've never heard is what are the people in Saudi Arabia wanting? You see, they want the best. Do they want the biggest? So are we underselling ourselves by sticking on 70,000? And are they thinking, well, no, we want to go more than that. We want something better. And I think that's maybe where the holdup is, not locally at all, because all the players locally that are involved are on board, I would suspect. There's the council can't see them turning down development money from PIF. The university is already getting money off them in different ways and would like a lot more. So no, I think we may be looking in the wrong direction. I just have a thing in the back of my mind that says it's the prestige of a stadium that will do other things that PIF will want, and that might be where they're stuck. That it's them that can't make their mind up how big, when, how much, etc. Money's not a problem, obviously, my gut reaction is that come the middle of this next sort of halfway between now and Christmas, I think will be a sudden announcement, and I think it'll be a surprising one.
Les asked a question earlier. Does George think that in today's Premier League, the fact that we have no debt is a positive? I feel at times that clubs with debt are able to excel where we are constricted by spending constrictions. Good question, Les.
It is a good question, but I honestly still have the opinion that the amount of debt, for example, take Tottenham, it would only take one of the banks that are supporting all the debt that Tottenham's got to go by the wayside, and that's Tottenham gone. Because when one goes, they'll fall like a house of cards. And look at the world we're living in at the moment, with geopolitical things that aren't to do with football, but could easily start to affect football. For example, a financial crisis would twist all sorts of things. And those clubs with the huge debts, particularly huge debts that are coming from the United States of America, so that's nearly all our top six, could find themselves in real dire straits. And as I say, once one falls, it wouldn't be long before another falls. In the business I've been in marine business, I know friends who owned cruise lines, and the banks used to were a nightmare with them. They loaned them all the money to build new ships, and then as soon as money got tight, they were calling the debts in, and that was the end for some of them, which was terrible. So no, I'm of the view and content that my club isn't billions and billions of pounds in debt. It's uncomfortable to me. And I think The way the world is, it's not a good place to be at the moment.
Okay, does George think we need another midfielder in the transfer window? If Joe Linton and or Tonali are missing, we're not the same team in my opinion, but what do you think?
If we you see, we need to reap what we've started with people like young Lewis Miley and that sort of thing. So we're not entirely bereft of talent, but it wouldn't be a priority for me. Although I must say, we were at the end of the season, we were a different team without Joe Linton, and God knows I never thought I'd heard myself say those words, but we did actually miss him. So maybe, and if I've no doubt that if Eddie feels that way, we'll end up with one. We'll get one.
I could do with Elliot Anderson coming back. He's the kind of player we could do with in a black and white shirt.
The other night for the under-21s, he was just a dream. Controlled the whole match. Controlled it from start to finish. Unbelievably so.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Well, yeah, Craig says we surrendered midfield in most of those games, just talking about last season. Les is talking of America. I did watch the U of A City game last night. Sadly, there were split screen adverts during match play. What is George's thoughts on that? Oh,
very American, isn't it? Sadly. And that's my worry about all these American owners getting involved in the Premier League. They're now a big majority of American owners, and they're already pushing for no relegation in the ladies' leagues. It'll not be long before they're doing it with the Premier League, I guess. I mean that's American football and baseball. No promotion, no relegation. It would change the nature of the game for us. It would be, the excitement. You don't want your team relegated, but the bloody excitement when you're down there is quite something. So that they're the bits of it that worry me. And I can see, for example, if they get their way with some of the things, I can see there being adverts while they're waiting for a throw-in to be taken in, or while they're waiting for a corner to be taken, that sort of thing, because that's what they do in American football and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it could happen, and it is absolutely depressing on the Club World Cup. Yeah, it makes a mess of the game. There's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't say it won't happen, because with all the American owners in, the logical move for them would be not 2 halves but 4 quarters, like American football, and with adverts in between each of the quarters. No, it's
sadly something I've been predicting on here for months.
Yeah, it's a worry. It's a worry.
Yeah, it is. Americanization is killing the earth, says Terry, which is a bit more dramatic than what we cover on NUFC Matters. But I get your point, mate. We're certainly talking football, and I think the Americanization of the Premier League is going to be a nightmare. Hopefully, the Premier League doesn't go with a new model of players walking out one by one and not as a team lineup. I mean, this is the kind of thing, Darren, you wonder, don't you? Yeah. Craig says Bruno doesn't have the running power to play a 2-man midfield, and it kills us. Surrendering the midfield is why I'm dead against 3 at the back. Yeah, lots to look at once the new players arrive.
I have to say the stats don't back that one up, mind. The player in the Premier League who ran more than any other midfielder in the Premiership was Bruno, by a country mile. Not just by a few meters, by a lot of meters, better than any other Premiership midfielder in the country. So there's ifs and buts, but that's true about a lot of our midfielders. I mean, Tonali wasn't far behind him, and on a minute-by-minute on the field stat, the next after Bruno was Sean Longstaff. So we've got people who can run and certainly have the stamina. It's the quality we need. So yeah, it's a whole different ball game now.
Okay, the clock has beaten us. I just want to point out as well on our website, we've now got this live. If you would like to come and watch the League Cup final with people from NUFC Matters, we are going to do a screening at the Irish Centre Friday the 25th of July. It's an event that's been run by a guy called Danny Mitchell, and it is basically a free event, 100 tickets, and you just need to register on the website to come along. And for everyone who registers, one lucky person will win this framed replica Cup Winners medal. But you must be attending the event to win. We won't be posting it out. It's quite fragile, and that's a bit of a faff on. So if you want to come along and watch the cup final again, but with NUFC Matters fans, then get yourself along. Just register. It is free. It doesn't cost you. It doesn't even cost you a penny. Never mind a pound, and you are 1 in 100 chance of winning that wonderful piece of memorabilia, which is a replica medal in a frame with a few photos in a lovely plaque commemorating the final. So that is on nufcmatters.co.uk. Pre-recorded show tomorrow, and then back on Sunday with a mashup of the Amigos and the Professionals for a couple of hours. We'll have a bit of a laugh. And George, are you taking Neil out anywhere today or tomorrow, or is he taking you out?
Well, we're off to the party tonight, aren't we?
Yes.
So he's having a rest at the moment, so I'll be sorting lunch out, and we'll get ourselves ready for the party. I think he's going a little bit up early to help AC to set things up. So yeah. So and as I say, he had a night out with Joss last night, with grandson. So yeah.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in so early. Thanks for your questions to everybody, and we will see you live again on Sunday. Take care. Thanks, George.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Bye, everybody.